Hey everyone, I'm Ariane Japan, your MC for this session. Now brace yourselves because you're about to tackle one of the biggest challenges on the web today, accessibility. Did you know that over 96% of websites have accessibility issues? That's huge, right? But this is the good news. Python developers can help change that story. Our speaker, Meagen Voss, Wagtail CMS community manager and accessibility champion, is here to show us how Python-powered tools like Wagtail CMS can make websites more inclusive, practical, and welcoming for all. Ready? Let's dive into building more accessible Python-powered websites with Meagen Voss.
Hello, everyone. My name is Meagen Voss. I work for a UK agency called Torchbox. I spend most of my day working on an open source project called Wagtail CMS. Wagtail is a Python powered content management system, and over the years, we've learned a lot about making web projects and websites more accessible. So I'm here today to talk to you about building more accessible Python powered websites. If I knew nothing else today, I am here to convince you, yes, you, Python person, that everyone is responsible for better accessibility on a website. And a lot of Python people feel that they might not be able to influence accessibility practices because if they're working on a larger team or a larger project, they might not be working on the front end code, or they might not be working on the pieces where all the users who are visiting the website are going to be interacting with. They might only be working on the piece where the back end users are going to be, or they might only be working on a piece where people are going to be inputting data or information. And honestly, even if you're only working on those pieces, you have influence. If nothing else, you can raise awareness of accessibility needs and encourage people to consider users that need screen readers or keyboard access or all the different things that make the web more accessible. At the very least, you can help me spread around this awesome image that I found here on Blue Sky. It's a Spirit Halloween costume bag, and it says accessibility overlay, and there's a picture of a clown on it. And the reason why that's funny is because accessibility overlays are kind of these magical solutions that are sold to like solve all of your accessibility needs, usually with just one line of JavaScript. And honestly, folks, that's a fantasy. Good accessibility practices come from everybody on a website project working together and thinking, what do people with accessibility needs need when they come visit our website? Now, I don't have time today to give you an accessibility crash course, so I'm going to give you a web accessibility flash course. Now, why do we need to do better? 94.8%. That is the percentage of the top 1 million websites on the entire internet that have accessibility failures on their home pages. Like, we're not talking pages that are a few levels down or pages that folks visit only 1 or 2 times a year. We're talking about the home pages, y'all. That is not good. And honestly, this number is an improvement over last year when that number was 95.9%. And so we're heading in the right direction. Maybe not as fast as I would like us to. But, it's in order to keep chipping away at that number and making progress, everybody who works on websites needs to be aware of what the most common issues are and do their part to help reduce them. Now, the same folks who came up with that number when they looked at the top 1 million websites also identified kind of the top issues. And right here I have a graph that shows the top 5 most common issues that they found in this study. And so the most common one was low contrast text, and that's when you use text that doesn't have enough contrast in it, so it's hard for people to read. And then there's missing alt text, which is the text that screen readers read when they look at an image. And so, it's either blank or most commonly it has like the file name in it or something like that. Then there also were missing labels, empty links, empty buttons, and missing language. Now, what is WCAG and why should you care about it? WCAG is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. It's created by the W3 Consortium, and the latest version of WCAG is 2.2, but there also is a lot of good information in past versions of WCAG like 2.1 and 2.0. And even if you get your website up to those versions and comply with those guidelines, you're doing pretty good in helping people with accessibility needs on your website. And there's also a new version of WCAG that is being worked on right now, 3.0. I definitely encourage you to visit the website and get familiar with them. It probably will take a lot more effort and, education in order to get your website fully up to compliance with these guidelines, but they provide a lot of good ways to start. All right, so let's talk about the practical strategies that you can use in your Python applications, because you can focus on kind of those key issues and use a few different ways to encourage better practices across your website. Those strategies that you can use include validation, which is kind of a Gandalf strategy. And that's why I have a meme here of Gandalf being like, "You shall not pass." And basically you're telling the user, hey, you can't do this thing unless you do it the way I want to. And you can use that to encourage better accessibility. The other strategy you can use is help text, which is more of a suggestive strategy. I have an image here of Puss in Boots with his big green eyes and his hat, and he's being like, "Pretty, pretty, please." It's basically you asking the user, hey, could you maybe do this a bit more accessibly than you're planning to? And then the final thing that is kind of a good practical strategy for Python folks is creating features that support contextual alt text. And the image I have here is somebody went a little nuts with a label maker and labeled a jar of Cheerios as bagel seeds. So they, instead of Cheerios, they saw bagel seeds. And the meme says, "I'll never call them Cheerios again." This is probably an extreme example of something that could be considered contextual alt text. But basically, they're like, this is their context. They see Cheerios as bagel seeds, and other people might see them as Cheerios. And so they like supporting different labels is an important feature that you can provide in your Python websites. All right, let's dive into a practical demo here. I'm going to show you all some things in Wagtail. I'm not going to spend much time explaining what Wagtail is. You can go to our websites if you'd like more information. But the strategies that I'm going to show you here don't just apply to Wagtail. You can use them in other places too. All right, let's head over to Wagtail. This is what the Wagtail admin looks like. And right here is a page where a content creator would be entering a blog post. And we have an example blog post here of Hello World. And in Wagtail, content creators we've given them the ability to have a lot of flexibility in how they structure content. So right here, this is an area called Stream Field where they can kind of move things around if they want. They can, move things up and down. They can add different types of content in here, like, embed a video or add an image, all sorts of things. And so you definitely want to encourage people who have this degree of flexibility not to make mistakes when it comes to things like heading hierarchy. Heading hierarchy and accessibility is important. You want to have things structured on the page HTML-wise so that you have H1, H2, H3, H4. You don't want to make a screen reader skip like from H1 suddenly to H5 or something like that because it can be a very confusing experience for somebody using a screen reader. So I have some code that I added to the back end here that when this person who has made a few mistakes in here accessibility wise when it comes to headings, when they try to save the draft, they get blocked. Like Gandalf, you shall not pass. You can't save your draft before you fix this issue. And so I'm going to hit the button here to go to the first error. And I provided a custom message here that prompts the person, hey, you have the incorrect heading hierarchy here. Avoid skipping levels. And that gets them to think, oh, what did I do wrong here? And so when they look around, they might see that and realize that they put an H2 after an H3 and they really shouldn't have done that. So the quickest way to fix this is, go ahead and change this from an H3 to an H2 here. And then, if we want to keep the H3 down here, we can also change that. And so when we save the draft here again, we get a message basically saying, hey, you are allowed to save the draft. But there are other things that can be spotted in here as well. In Wagtail, we actually built in a accessibility checker straight into the content management system that can also pick up on issues as well. So right here, I am going to save the draft. And I have found an issue. There is a empty heading down here. And if I hit here, it'll actually show me where that is by being like, hey, the issue is right here in your text. And I'm like, oh goodness, I need to go check that. So if I scroll down here, I see, oh, whoops, I did not mean to leave that empty heading here. That leaves an H3 tag in there that would confuse the heck out of a screen reader. And so I can save the draft. And that is an example of kind of a more suggestive way to do validation versus like the full stop, like, hey, you can't do this thing. So this is like another way that you can approach validation if you want to, which is like, kind of popping up a flag instead. So let's look at the next example, the next strategy that I was talking about. We'll go to another blog post here. One example I have on contextual alt text. And so examples of help text that I put in here that I programmed into blog posts include this help panel here that helps people avoid that heading hierarchy issue that I just showed you how to solve on the last blog. So this help panel here just kind of reminds people, hey, make sure you keep your headings in order. And I can also include a link here to remind people what accessible heading structure looks like. So that's, call out boxes and things like that in big areas of an application can be very useful for encouraging better accessibility practices. You can also kind of drill down a bit and add help text to kind of lower level features. For example, this image block here says change the alt text to match the context of your blog. And this is a good reminder to use contextual alt text. Now, what is contextual alt text? I got like a minute to share here. But basically, you can have different context for the same image. And it's important to provide support for providing different descriptions of the same image so that if people reuse the image in different areas of the website, they have the correct context. So, for example, in this area I have on like badgers in English literature, the alt text description I have is a European badger with thick white and black stripe markings on its face, which would be different from like this item on a small Pennsylvania town electing Cecil the badger to be their mascot, which this is totally made up. But the description I would use there is Cecil the badger poking his head up in a patch of grass. And that provides better context for people. And so, like, making sure that you provide support when you create these features or when you create anything that handles images, that provides alt text options and also maybe the option to make an image decorative, is a good way to encourage good alt text practices among the people who use your website and who create content on it, even though you are just working on the back end. So, like, and another good thing that we do here is that, we include the default right away. It's changeable, but that default is there in case somebody is working fast and they forget things. All right, folks, I think that it is time to wrap things up. I'm going to go ahead and let you know that I have a few more resources here that you can access. The slides are at wagtail.org/PyLadies2025. I included the repo with all of this code that you can go play with, along with some repos for other Wagtail projects that you can go play with if you like to. And I also included a nice long list of web accessibility resources. Thank you so much for your time, y'all, and go out there and do good when it comes to accessibility.
What an incredible session. Meagen just reminded us that accessibility isn't just a checkbox. It's a commitment to building a web that truly includes everyone, from Wagtail-powered demos to practical best practices. She showed us how Python developers can lead the way in making the internet more usable and human. Be sure to explore the tutorial and the resources Meagen shared. They are the perfect next step, so keep learning and applying what you have seen today. Let's carry this energy forward and keep coding with accessibility at the heart of our work. Thank you, Meagen, and thank you all for being part of PyLadies Con 2025.